What are macronutrients? I've been amazed at the response that I've gotten over the past couple of months with questions of what are macronutrients. For over a decade, I wrote diet prescriptions out, teaching people how much of protein, carbs, and fat they should eat, and just named it as nutrition. Didn't really put a spin on it, macros and things of that nature. But just recently, with the term macro diet or macro plan, it seems like there's just a lot of confusion on what actually are macronutrients. So I think people are just overthinking this, okay? We have 4 macronutrients and 5 if we wanted to go down that rabbit hole, okay? So we start looking at macronutrients. We have our proteins, our carbs, and our fats. You could also theoretically put alcohol in there because alcohol does have calories per gram, so we can use that as energy. It's not like we consume alcohol and those calories or that energy goes, disappears. And then we could start, talking about a 5th one, which would be ketones, because now we can actually buy ketone powder. And all ketones are a byproduct of breaking fat down in the body. So whether that be fat that we consume or whether that be fat from our stored energy sources, aka fat cells, we break that apart. We use ketones for energy. So we could theoretically say ketone is a macronutrient. But the 3 basic ones that we deal with are protein, carbs, and fat. And that's what I do with my plans for fat loss or weight gain, is roughly give those numbers where I have individuals start tracking their food that they consume, matching it up with the macros, okay? So we look at the proteins, most of the time on proteins we use for building things on our body. So most of you will think, okay, protein I need to build muscle tissue, which is true, but there's also some cases in our life we need to increase our protein intake. One would be if we're going on a reduced calorie diet, so we're going to be on a lower calorie diet than a resting metabolic rate for a while, we would want to increase protein. Second would be if we were under any injuries or stress, things like a burn, you would want to increase that protein intake. Proteins are meats, fish, eggs, some cheese, and high quality protein shakes would fall underneath our protein category. Protein, once again, for building things, our muscle and all cellular levels on the body, we need protein, okay? When I talk about protein and the fact of it does have calories, it does have energy, I want you guys to think of it as oil in your car, okay? It is an energy, we need it for certain things, but it doesn't really propel us like gas would, okay, in our vehicle. So the fats and the carbs, I want you guys to think of more like gas as far as when we're talking energy sources, okay? So that's kind of my summary of protein. Without going into amounts of protein, roughly females, just generic recommendation would be somewhere between 80 and 120 grams a day, and then guys 125 to 175, depending on what's going on as far as those amounts needed for the day. Okay. Next up, we'll talk about fats. Fat gets a little bit of a bad rap because, we've heard fat is bad. Low-fat diet's been pushed over the last 70 years. And if you think about that, guys, unfortunately, the last 70 years, fat consumption has actually went down. Carbohydrate consumption has actually went up. And what has obesity rates, diabetes, and those facets of health diseases, what have they done in the last 70 years? Correct, they've went up. So we really want to take that term fat and not think of it as bad, okay? I wish fat that we consumed as far as an energy source was a totally different name than adipose tissue on our body. So fat, we can use for energy. So one big thing I want you to think about, when we consume fat, we can use it for energy. It's also used for a lot of our cells in our body to make hormones such as testosterone, cholesterol, things of that nature. So we do need fat in our diet, okay? Most of the fats, without diving down the rabbit hole, the good ones and bad ones and things of that nature, but most of your fats are going to be your nuts and seeds, avocados, olives, grass-fed butter, coconut, things of that nature. We could also throw your oils in there, but like I said, not going down which ones are specifically good or bad, just that those would be classified as our fat foods. Remember, fat is an energy. If I was giving you guys just a rough estimate of how much you would need a day, I generally start clients out 75 to 125 grams of fat a day, just as a rough estimate of the fat that they would need, okay? That leaves us with carbohydrate. If I didn't mention a food being a protein or a fat, then guess what? All other foods are carbohydrates. And I always preach it and say it's not that carbohydrates are bad. I do reduce carbs in a lot of people's diets because they are over consuming them. Okay, so think carbs are not bad. Excess consumption of carbs, especially the simple carbohydrate, is where we get in trouble. then it raises our blood sugar and our insulin levels, and that's just a whole other talk there. For weight loss, weight maintenance, just a general rule of thumb that we'll do is 150 grams of carbs for guys, 100 grams of carbs for ladies is just good starting points. Okay. If you're interested in more nutrition knowledge like this or nutrition education like this, feel free to send me a message. I'll put you into my private blog where I do live Q&A once or twice a week to keep up with those posts. And as I always say, guys, my inbox is open to any nutritional and supplement questions that you have. I want you guys to have a great day.